acompañarnos acá su amigo José Luis Márquez, el pitufo, el burro siempre por delante. Me acompaña también mi gran amigo Marco Antonio Esparza, el alacrán. Y el día de hoy tenemos a un invitado especial, alacrán.
Es un invitado de lujo, de verdad, porque no todos los días visitan los medios de comunicación en español, ¿verdad? O los medios de comunicación les abrimos la puerta también, claro, a senadores que forman un papel importantísimo en todo lo que tú y yo vivimos día a día en este estado. Y precisamente él nos representa y él es el senador Jon Ossoff. Bienvenido.
Thank you so much. Marco, great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, Senator, if there was a soccer game between the senators and the House of Representatives, who would win and what would be the score?
Wow, that is not something I've ever given any thought to. I think so I'm the youngest senator.
Okay.
By a lot.
Okay.
I think I'm the youngest senator by like 9 years.
Wow.
That is
so
a decade.
I got to give it to the House
okay,
in that soccer game because there's a little more youth
right
in the House of Representatives than in the Senate, where I think my average colleague is in their late 60s, and I'm 35, so it's why I encourage young people to consider public service and get involved.
Absolutely, absolutely. Senator Jon Ossoff is here with us today, and we have tons of questions, Senator. So, let's get to it. In a recent poll from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, it stated that the Latino vote in Georgia is literally split down the middle. Republican, Democrat, 50-50 or 49-51. And that it could go either way. And the great thing about having you here today is, one, you're not running for public office. So that's awesome, right? Because usually when we have somebody that's running for public office, they'll try to sway it a little bit. But what are your thoughts, and how would you motivate that person that's still on the fence of either voting for one or the other? What would your words of motivation be?
Well, first of all, I would say, I recognize that the Hispanic community in Georgia is diverse, and it's politically diverse. And there are folks in the Hispanic community in Georgia with a wide range of perspectives. And it's a big mistake for any politician or any political party to feel entitled to the support of an entire community or to take for granted the support of an entire community. What I am trying to do is to be the most visible, responsive, accessible, and supportive federal representative that Georgia's Hispanic community has ever had. And that's why, even though I'm not running for re-election for 4 years, I work hard to communicate with the Latino community in Spanish language media, to be present and visible, to have folks on my team who are bilingual, who can provide that kind of support. So what I would just encourage everyone to do is to participate, to vote, to make a plan to vote, and to vote early. Don't put this off until election day. Our democracy functions best when every eligible voter participates in it. It makes their voice heard. Of course, I am strongly supporting the re-election of my colleague, Senator Warnock. We've worked closely together on public safety, on infrastructure, to expand healthcare access in the state of Georgia. And I think that when we look at what's happening with Medicaid in the state of Georgia and the state of healthcare and hospital closures, Stacey Abrams has a really strong plan to strengthen our hospital system and strengthen Medicaid.
Well, Lord knows that our community is plagued with diabetes, high blood pressure, and I've heard some horror stories from our listeners saying that they go to the doctor and they can't even get their insulin or their metformin or even the sensors or the blood strips to check their blood and try to combat or arrest this fatal disease of diabetes, right? Just to mention a few. Tell me a little bit more about that, Senator Jon Ossoff, about what you're doing for the community as far as healthcare is concerned. I heard you have some mobile clinics that are going to start, activating here soon, huh?
I'm working to expand the access to these mobile health clinics. Okay. And what that means is it's a bus or a trailer with nurses or doctors or dentists who come into the community and provide service on your street, not requiring folks necessarily to go across town to get to those appointments. I think, I've got a 10-month-old daughter at home, and I know that especially for parents of young children, having access in your own neighborhood, in your own community to healthcare services is convenient. Folks don't necessarily have time to commute in gridlocked traffic and take their kids to the doctor separately and then go to their own appointments. So we want to make more healthcare options available in the community.
Absolutely.
Very, very important topics that we're talking about today, Senator. And you know, something that has come to me, and you mentioned it right now about visiting the local radio stations and TV stations. And I'm going to share something with you. I've been doing radio for the past 20 something, almost 30 years, which has been, you know, more than half of my life. And I've been in all kinds of cities. I've been in LA, I've been in Chicago, I've been in Phoenix. And to tell you the truth, the senators do not visit us. They don't take the time to come into a radio station and talk to our community about what's going on, what they're doing. And I think that this is one of the best outlets that they could use, especially because we are from the community. People trust our radio station. We talk about this in California a lot, about how when there's an earthquake, usually the first thing they do is they'll go to the radio station website, or they'll turn on the radio station to know where the earthquake was, how strong it was. So in this case, what made you want to take this step in visiting the radio stations and talking directly to our listeners about everything that you're doing, like, for example, the healthcare?
Because I think politicians in Georgia have been neglecting and ignoring the Hispanic community.
Okay.
And have been treating the Hispanic community like it is monolithic, if you understand what I mean. Like it has one point of view.
Right.
As opposed to being a diverse and vibrant community with many different needs and perspectives and experiences. I am not entitled to anyone's support. I am not entitled to anyone's vote. I work for the people. My obligation is to the people. And so I come on the air like this in order to communicate what I am doing on behalf of the state, to answer questions about what I'm doing on behalf of the state, and to be held accountable to the highest standard of service.
So that's awesome. I mean, you know, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I heard a ex-public servant, colleague of yours, Senator, saying, if you're not in this full-time, ready to serve like you promised the people, you know, 80 hours a week, not 40, then you really need to check yourself, is what she said. And I see you out there grinding. You're here with us today, so thank you so much. You know, this just came down the pipeline. TPS for Central Americans got a bit of a snag in the road. Apparently, there could be about close to 250,000 Central Americans could be affected. Here in Georgia, we're estimating around 11,000 Central Americans could be affected by December if there's something not done for TPS. Could you give us an update on that? You know, what's the Senate doing? Do we have any headway with some type of, you know, comprehensive immigration reform, Senator? That's obviously the main question from our people.
I wish I had better news to share. But just as I come on radio like this to be held accountable and to answer questions, I also come on radio like this to be absolutely honest and candid about what I'm seeing in Congress. And one of my greatest frustrations since I took office is the total gridlock on immigration policy, the total inability of either political party to come toward a comprehensive compromise. It is one of the greatest failures of our political system that for the last 15 years, we've largely known what the outlines of comprehensive immigration reform should be.
Right.
For example, taking care of dreamers. For example, ensuring we have a secure border.
Absolutely.
Things that the overwhelming majority of Americans, and I think the majority of Latinos in Georgia, support. And yet, many of my colleagues cannot summon the political courage to work in good faith on this issue.
Understood. Senator, what is it? Is it one of the parties wants to say, yeah, we were first, we're the ones that did it? Is that the gridlock, or is it just the lack of understanding of where we stand as a community? Because you hit the nail on the head. Most of us, I'm second generation. I was born in the U.S. My father crossed illegally. He was able to get his residency and eventually his citizenship 5 years ago. via the Reagan administration.
No.
But again, the thing is, one, what is it? Is it either party wants the brownie points and obviously the votes, or is it just a total lack of misunderstanding of what immigration or how it works?
I think that until politicians are afraid of losing because they've failed to pass reform, there will not be reform. At the moment, politicians are afraid of losing for trying. You see what I mean?
I completely understand.
And something that I have, continued to try to remind my colleagues in both parties is we have to be comfortable taking some risks. Republicans are afraid to talk about a path to legal status for folks who are here, otherwise following the law, who are deeply rooted parts of our community.
Paying taxes.
Paying taxes when we have labor shortages. Democrats are afraid to talk about border security and to acknowledge the reality that if we don't know and can't control who's entering and exit our territory, that's a problem. So until both political parties can summon the courage to be honest, then to be honest with you, I remain a little bit pessimistic that in the short term, we're going to make much progress.
Appreciate your honesty and transparency, Marco.
No, and I wanted to comment a little bit more about, now that we're talking about a reforma migratoria, ¿cómo se dice?
Immigration reform.
An immigration reform. The first thing that comes to mind is shows that I've listened to during my whole life, and I've heard of a lot of the Anglo-American listeners calling in and saying, well, why don't they come over legally? Like if it was that simple. And I'm pretty sure that if they understood that it's really not that simple to get legally into the country, they would understand that they need to figure out a way of having whoever's here legally and possibilities of people that are still trying to immigrate here to be able to immigrate legally. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why, personally, I think it's one of the main reasons why they don't do anything or move forward with anything, because they really don't understand how hard it is and how hard it is in their countries. And that's why there is no help at the end of the day. I don't know what you think about that, if you understood me.
I understand you, and it's also a major economic issue. Like right now, for example, a skilled tradesperson or worker who has experience and expertise to offer in a growing industry here in the U.S., who can help train American workers at that factory, could wait 3 years for just the interview for a visa. So the United States should make it easier for folks who want to come and contribute to our country to do so legally, while securing our borders so that we can know and control who crosses them, and being honest and compassionate when we're talking about those who lack documentation but otherwise follow the law, pay their taxes, and are integral parts of American communities. How does that sound to you?
It sounds really good, and it sounds like a dream come true. And at the end of the day, we also talk about this off the air a lot. We talk about how much money people to legalize their situation here, they're willing to pay. They're willing to pay a lot of money that could help the economy, and then at the end of the day, we'll have a good result, because we will know exactly who is here, how their criminal record is, what kind of people they are, and so I think it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely. Senator John Ossoff on La Raza with Marco and Jose Luis. We love to keep you like all day, Senator, but we know that you've got a lot of stuff to do. We know that you're in town because you're the chair of the investigative committee to discover some inconsistencies with a penitentiary here in Atlanta. We know that you were visiting the penitentiary. Can you share a little bit more about that? Anything from criminal activities to abuse, maybe even some deaths. It was real interesting. I saw an interview where you mentioned this, and it just blew my mind. And I said, I gotta ask him about this. How did it go today?
Sure. So just for everyone's information, I chair the investigations subcommittee for the U.S. Senate. So that makes me the lead investigator for the Senate. And I have a background in investigative journalism, so I'm able to apply that experience to investigating corruption, misconduct, human rights abuses, organized crime. And we conducted a 10-month investigation, Republicans and Democrats working together under my leadership, of the federal penitentiary here in Atlanta. And we found that going back a decade, the Federal Bureau of Prisons knew that there was serious abuse, corruption, and misconduct in that prison, but failed to take any action to correct it. And not only that, the Bureau of Prisons' own internal investigators were warning that this posed not just a threat to those who work at the penitentiary and those who are incarcerated at the penitentiary, but also to the broader community, that it was a public safety threat for Metro Atlanta, for the state of Georgia, and for the entire Southeast region, how insecure this prison was. So I released those findings over the summer. Today I inspected the facility along with the new director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and I'm going to continue to hold the leadership there accountable to making real changes.
Outstanding. It's been awesome having you. I hope it's not the last time. Obviously, a lot of our listeners love to follow famous people like yourself on social media. Where can we find you on social media?
So if I can help with anything in any way, it's ossoff.senate.gov. That's ossoff.senate.gov. You can find me on Instagram at John Ossoff, on Twitter at Ossoff. Like I said, my team speaks English and Spanish. I want to be the most effective, present, visible, and responsive elected representative that Georgia's Hispanic community has ever had. So please contact my office and let us know how we can help. ossoff.senate.gov.
Senador, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Un placer.